What a contrast between, on the one hand, the magnificent rolling titles of the men of power, as listed in today's Gospel: Emperor, Governor, Tetrarch, Pontiff, and on the other, the simplicity of the reference to St. John the Baptist in the wilderness. Our religion doesn't begin in palaces with potentates, or for that matter in universities with academics, but it begins in the desert. So what's significant about that? Well, it's significant that the environment where our faith took its rise was the sort of place where people tend to feel most exposed, vulnerable, on the knife edge of existence. Many people can't stand being alone. They have to be accompanied, even if only by a disembodied voice from the radio set or over the internet. And this is strange, because there's nothing necessarily boring about being alone, at least for quite long stretches of time. The reason why, I think, is that the reason why it's not so boring is that, as older Catholic works of spirituality used to insist, we each have an interior life. That idea of the interior life has rather fallen on hard times of late, chased out of church usage by the emphasis on practical Christianity, which is so typical of modernity. Oddly enough, though, there are plenty of people out there in the wider society who, thanks to a varied set of influences from New Age, the Oriental religions, and a preference for, as they say, spirituality, not institutional religion, there are a lot of people out there in the wider world who have absolutely no problem with this notion of the interior life. But I suppose sermons like this are for those within the household of faith. So surprising as it would seem to some earlier generations in the church, I think I need to explain what the interior life might be. Each of us carries about an interior world which is alive with memories, impressions, feelings, attitudes, arguments, dispositions towards other people, and a lot more. What at any given moment each of us is doing in the outer world is likely to be actually rather duller than that inner world, with all its inheritance from our personal past, as well as the power of thought to range over time and space. So why is it that we shudder at the idea of desert solitude? Is it because we have a shrewd suspicion that in a place like that, a desert place, a John the Baptist kind of place, we would have to come to terms with ourselves in a way that we wouldn't much care for? And this is very much a John the Baptist kind of prickly proposal. Plainly enough, he was a person who made others uncomfortable. He belongs with what the German philosopher Hegel called the practitioners of the negative. Sometimes negatives, negations, are needed in order to clear a way for what positives, affirmations, really mean. That's as true in its own way of living as it is of thinking. sometimes, or indeed often, and in a fallen world, perhaps even habitually, we need to clear out junk so as to make way for true goods. In biblical language then, the job of the Holy Forerunner was to preach a baptism of repentance for the forgiveness of sins. That was obviously intended to have positive consequences, but nonetheless, it was still primarily a negative undertaking. John's task was to put his finger on people's weak spots and to keep it there until they noticed. It's not just a question of identifying our bad deeds, our obviously blameworthy deeds. It's also a matter of our good, apparently praiseworthy deeds, since these too can have an uninspiring background. St. Augustine, in his monastic rule, notes how frequently pride, as he puts it, pride steals in to ruin even good deeds. That being so, there must be some labor of the negative before we can be ready for the ultra-positive, for the gospel of the kingdom. We have to go in for a bit of deconstruction to clear away the rubble of complacency and self-deception. Otherwise, we shan't have a path clear in our lives for the incarnate one to come and to enter where he is needed and wanted by those who should be waiting for him, yearning for him, rather than, let us say, reassuring themselves that they are fine just as they are.